Hello, everyone. I am Pepe Zan, Associate Director and Fellow of the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arch Latin America Center, and welcome to today's Experts of the Americas interview. Today, I'm just especially delighted to introduce our distinguished guest, Angela Zuluaga, who is the Vice President of Public Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability for Latin America Operating Unit at the Coca-Cola Company. Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Pepe. And actually, it's a very pleasure for me to be here and to be with all of you, as always.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angela. And before we start, let me just say a couple quick words on the context for this interview. At our center, the Adrian Arch Latin America Center, we focus on Latin America and the Caribbean's strategic role in a global context, and always with a priority on the pressing economic and political issues that will define the region's trajectory now in the years ahead. And at this moment, we're very much committed to helping the region to use this COVID-19 pandemic as an inflection point for leapfrogging economic development. And part of the process leads to a lot of impactful partnerships. And indeed, for example, we have partnered with the Inter-American Development Bank to help better understand the opportunities and the challenges that the private sector sees in our region, and to better understand as well the critical role that the private sector could be playing in supporting economic recovery and long-term prosperity in Latin America and the Caribbean. So today's interview is a part of a conversation series with Latin American Caribbean private sector leaders on these topics. Insights from this interview today and other interviews will provide input for an upcoming Atlantic Council and IDB report. Now, specifically today, we will focus on Coca-Cola, their perspective in the broader food and beverage space, which is going to be very exciting. And once again, Angela, Vice President of Public Affairs, Communications, Sustainability for Latin America Operating Unit, Coca-Cola Company. Thank you so much again. And with that, we'll start off our interview. The first question, and this is an interesting question to me, is why Latin America and the Caribbean? Companies like Coca-Cola are multinational companies with presence across the world, and of course, longstanding presence and commitment to Latin America and the Caribbean. So Angela, tell us a little bit about that, and tell us what are some of the unique factors that make this region such an important market for you, especially when compared to other regions.
Well, Pepe, thank you. And thank you for your question. And let me start with a very interesting fun fact. I could say the first place where Coca-Cola was seated after the US was Panama. So it's quite interesting to see that Latin America was the first place where the Coca-Cola company decided to take their operations abroad. So that's one. But second, Coca-Cola Latin America, it's a very important place for the business. First of all, we're 500 million consumers. Second, we have one of the highest brand love scores across the world in several countries, ranking on the top 5. Third, we represent a very important portion of the volume of the globally. It's about 27% as of 2021. So that means that we are a very important part of the business. Also, we have some of the most profitable markets worldwide. But one thing that is quite important is also leading on the agenda on the ESG. We have refillables being a very important and role model for our business across the world. And also one important thing, there is no region with such a diversity as we have in Latin America. We have emerging economies, we have very poor economies, we also have very strong economies. So it's a very diverse region for us. And then therefore, a lot of the things are being tested in Latin America, not only because of what it means on the diversity side, but also on the dynamics of the business. We have, for example, consumers that are very high profile, such as we have in Argentina, and some others that are more I could say low profile in several markets, such as we have in Caribbean and Central America. So it's a place where everything is tested. It's a place where, there is all the campaigns come first besides US, and I could say some places in Europe, because we know that whatever works in Latin America is going to work globally. Also, important part is when we talked about, and I was mentioning before, when we talked about the ESG agenda, we're leaders in refillables, which is something that is very strong and very important for a sustainability agenda, not only in the perspective of, what it actually means for the environment, but also what it means for the consumer. So now we can see a lot of the trends that we have been having in different tests that we have done in several countries that are being tested right now in Europe and Asia, in the US. Important things to mention is investments that we're doing here as becoming a world-class emerging markets. And last but not least, I have to say that one of the most important facts that we have seen is not only what we have as an environment, because it's a very volatile environment, as we can see in Latin America, but also the way we operate in different markets. It's very different how we operate in the Caribbean, on Central America, on South and North cone, but it's because the difference between governments, politics, I will say the environment per se, as we're living right now, makes a very unique region. So we rank on one of the top biggest, we call it operating units. And this means a lot, I can say, in terms of what we want to bring as investment, what we want to test in the countries, what we want to be looking forward to reach our moonshots. So I could say that Latin America is playing a very important role, and it's being highlighted every time we talk to investors, or every time investors are talking about us. Latin America is at the spotlight of everything we're doing.
This is wonderful. I particularly love two things you mentioned. One is the fact that Latin America and the Caribbean is very much at the front line of innovation, where interesting experiments are being tested and then amplified at the global level. That's just wonderful. And the second thing, I love the way you explain why Latin America is such a priority for your company, from both the business side of it, the consumer market, the size of it, but also some of the ESG and sustainability issues of it, which are, and these two pillars, of course, are increasingly interconnected for a lot of multinational companies. And on that point, let me lead us to the second question, which is how the private sector can become an even more important agent of change. You covered quite a bit on the sustainability front. Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that down the road as well. But beyond that, one thing we've learned during the pandemic is, some of the structural social economic changes facing our region and the need to really tackle them. So tell us, what do you see as one or two some of these key challenges, and how is Coca-Cola helping to mitigate or address them?
Sure. Well, Pepe, let me tell you a few things. First of all, as being of one of the most iconic and loved brands globally, we have a major responsibility, not only in what we do as a business, but also how we do and how we manage our business and conduct our business. We always mention that we're a global company, but we operate locally. And that's the most important part. And I think that's part of the magic of the Coca-Cola company and the system. And we're very conscious and very aware of the needs of the communities and the areas where we operate. Therefore, and you're talking about challenges, and especially after the pandemic, and this is a reflection that I believe is very important. One thing is how we used to do business before the pandemic, and then how we have to pivot, switch, and readapt on the way we do business post-pandemic. And let me give you a couple examples. We have a very strong commitment we used to have a very strong commitment on women empowerment. After the pandemic, we said, it's not just about women, it's empowerment itself, it's youth, it's women, it's men, it's everybody, how we can empower them, especially economically, to become and reactivate what is the economies. Because if we have a healthy economy, we'll have a healthy business. So if we know if the country is doing good, the business is going to do good. So we change our mindset on that regards, and that's a major challenge, because it's not only how we align what we used to be our own beliefs, but also how we align our beliefs to the actual needs of the communities and the needs of the countries. So that's one. And we have a full commitment. We just completed our commitment on women empowerment. There was 5 million women empowered economically worldwide. We reached over 6 million. Now we said we're going to go higher. And it's not just about women, how we're going to empower the youth, how we're going to empower the small retailers across Latin America. So this is very important, because there is a full commitment, full investments that we're going to go forward. And especially in this regards on the small retailers, which we want to empower them, is how we bring digital agenda, how we make them sustainable, how we teach them soft and hard skills to make sure that they have a survival business for the future. So that's one part that is critical. And also, when we talked about these ecosystem that we're talking about, it's more about, and it's more related to what else can we do to make sure that we bring up the society, that we can bring and reactivate economically and socially what it was lost on this period of time. So there is a major commitment from us. The other part, and is specifically to just those small retailers, and those are our heart. The most and the big chunk of our business belong to the small retailers. So therefore, they are part of our day-to-day business, and they're part of day-to-day lives. We know the role that they play. Small retailers are the family, the psychologists, their friends of their communities where they are. And thanks to them, we have a business. Thanks to them is how we grow every day. I mean, I can tell you that almost 70% of our business in Latin America belongs to the small retailers. So we decided to move and focus and do major investments with our bottlers and with bottling partners to make sure that not only that we reactivate them, but also elevate their capacities and elevate their ability to continue to grow their business, and to also to be able to be part of our system and our ecosystem to experiment moving forward. Digitalization, for example, was a very important part. How we make sure that not only they formalize their business, but also they become on the digital area. It's a must. If not, they would be out of business. So it's a full commitment that we have, and we're looking forward to bring a lot more ideas to make sure that they are sustainable. And let me give you an example of one idea: universal bottle. What is universal bottle for us? It's how not only for it's good for the environment, but also it's easy in how it rotates on the small retailers. It's same bottle, different labels, different products. And you say, this is something very small, and it's not small. It's something, it's a game changer, because not only the way they put the displays, not only the way they can sell, the way they can memorize the type of products they are selling, but it's also about how they're also feeling part of the community. And one of the other things that we have also been doing with them is how we bring them and be part of the ESG agenda. We are very conscious that the ESG agenda is not just a Coke or a system role. We need to bring partners. We need to teach. We need to educate. So one of the things that we're doing, among many others, partnerships that we're doing with all of you, it's also how we bring those small retailers and get conscious about it. We have, for example, in different places across Latin America with different names, what we call stores without residues. So that means how we can bring our World Without Waste commitment with those small retailers, and they can also be part of the agenda and build a better world. And one of the things that we have seen is not only it really makes them feel good about what they're doing, how they are selling, what they are selling, but it also makes them feel good and make them be an example in their communities of how they are working on a more sustainable environment. So those are the two things that I will say as a very important challenge across the Latin America, but also is something that we are fully committed to not only do it ourselves, but also bring more partners to move forward. I think there is a special call to the private sector. We have a role to play, as well as we have the communities, as well as that we have governments, but we need to make sure that we focus ourselves on what is on our hands and what we can do for Latin American countries if we want to make them prosperous, moving forward in the future to come.
Thank you for that, Angela. I really like this partnership-based approach, this ecosystem approach, the importance of education, the importance of empowerment, specifically on new trends such as digitalization, ESGs, which sometimes could be very challenging for SMEs with capacity constraints. And just can't agree more on the importance of inclusive recovery. This is something that we work very hard on at the Adrian Narsh Latin America Center, and certainly with our partner at the Inter-American Development as well. It's a major priority for them, whether that's gender empowerment, whether that's SME, that's certainly, we could do a whole interview on these two topics for a separate day. And I think, just really worth delving into. Perhaps, tying that into my next question, you touched a little bit upon governments towards the end of your response. And I think, you also started your response by saying that, this pandemic has been an interesting learning experience, understanding some of the inequality in the region, the importance of inclusion and empowerment. Another lesson learned for me during the pandemic has been that public-private partnership has just become so important. I think companies and governments and other entities, civil society, realized that we were dealing with, and in many ways we still are dealing with, a challenge that no one can really tackle on their own. The partnership, the collaboration aspect of it is absolutely important. So in that context, something I've read about is that in 2021, Circulate Capital, which is an investment management firm that Coca-Cola invests in, announced a $4 million announcement in the IDB lab to support startups in Latin America. So tell us about partnerships like this. Why are partnerships like this so impactful? And then generally speaking, I think, thinking through our partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank, thinking about the role of government, how can the public sector and multilateral organizations like the IDB help make Latin America and the Caribbean even more business investment friendly for private sector players like Coca-Cola?
Thank you, Pepe. No, let me tell you something. Everything we do, we have full commitment that, one, we're going to put from our side everything that is possible in our hands, but we also have learned, and I can tell you in a very humble way, many years ago, that nothing can be done alone. And the success is not a company success. It's a collective success of governments, of communities. So therefore, in every single commitment that we make, and you mentioned, for example, on the investment, on the capital investment that we did with the IDB, and it was about thinking about, it was more thinking about that. It was thinking about how we can do more exponential things, how we can bring more support to communities, more support to those entrepreneurs. We don't know everything. And sometimes we just know a small portion of what we want to do. But if we want to make it big, if we want to do bold moves, there's where the partners come. The other part that I believe is important is to be able to understand that us as a company and as a private sector, we can invest, we can provide resources, we can understand the needs. But when we have partners like IDB, like you, like many other institutions that are working with us on, for example, Work Without Waste, on water, on women empowerment, on small retailers, you guys have the sensibility of what is actually needed in the communities. And it will be, bizarre from us to believe that we can just go invest and move out. No, we have to do sustainable investments. And those sustainable investments begins with making sure that we're putting our resources where it's really going to make a difference. And that's being true to our purpose, refresh the world and make a difference. And we always think about that. So every time we work on partnerships, and let me tell you something, we never do anything alone. Everything we do with our ESG agenda, with our commercial agenda, is done through partnerships. Why? Because we know that's how we can make something really different. We know that that's how we can really provide something meaningful for the people, for the communities, for the governments. And one of the things that is also important, and it's a very, I like, how you frame the question, because it's a reflection for all of us. I know many years ago, every company wanted to do their things on their own because reputational scores, because we wanted to make sure that we just we're very well known for what we used to do as a company. It doesn't happen like that anymore. It's not sustainable to do it that way. It's not about a company. It's not about our own reputation only. It's about how we transform the community. And I mentioned that before. If we have a sustainable community, if we have a healthy economy, we will have a healthy business. So what is good for the country, for example, is going to be good for our business. And as far as government, and you talk a very important point, is I love every time we have partnerships with governments, because that's the way to bring confidence, to bring more investments, but as well, it brings a stability to make sure that we can plan in the long term, that we can invest on the long term, that we can do bigger things. Working with governments not only brings us the possibility to bring more money, like always is important, but it's also to bring more ideas and challenge ideas and do things that are differently and test new things, or maybe reapply, shift and leave from other countries worldwide. I think one of the beauties of being a Coca-Cola company is more than 200 countries, things are being done. And every time you see and you need something, you raise your hand and somebody has done something similar or exactly the same way that we can bring and reapply. So things are being already tested. And when we have these partnerships and we can say to the governments is, we already done that. This is the results. This worked. This didn't work. Or even with our partners, I think it's a lot easier and we have a better chance to get our path to success. And last but not least, I will say that this is a call to all of us. I always believe in this golden triangle where we talked about the importance of having governments, community, and private sector together with the multilaterals being part of it. And this is the only way we're going to succeed. And it's not who is against who. It goes beyond ideological, political, philosophical thoughts. It's go beyond if we always think about the community first, I know we will have a strong purpose towards that. And I know we can make a really big difference together if we keep that in mind.
Thank you for that. I love the golden triangle, and that's certainly something that we'll dig more into in our report and the research process. Something that's really worth a lot more attention. And on the government point, just this was echoed throughout our interview series with other companies, multinational companies from other sectors. Just the importance of stability, clarity, making sure that there is attractiveness in the region at the country level for long-term committed investment. That's absolutely important. And finally, I think the other point you mentioned, which is private sector realized and Coca-Cola realized a long time ago that, companies cannot be doing on their own. One thing I've noticed during the pandemic was that within the private sector, a lot of companies that were previously and mostly competitors start collaborating. I think when we're faced a challenge like the pandemic and its aftermath, it really forces us to rethink some of these issues. And that leads me to the next question, which is more on the business side, but kind of continuing along this question about rethinking issues that came up during and before and after the pandemic. And this business related question is, it's big and it's simple in a way. It's big in the sense that business models and customer needs have just really evolved throughout the pandemic. Depending on the sector you're in, this could be really playing out in different ways. We can talk about digitization, which we mentioned a little bit early on. Depending on the other sectors, we can talk about supply chain restructuring, and certainly ESG and resilience, certain things you've mentioned earlier as well. And a lot of these things will have long-term implications. So how is Coca-Cola adapting to some of these changes in Latin America and the Caribbean that's happened during the pandemic?
Pepe, I can tell you that we went through a major transformation, and I say proud to say, I don't think a company has ever gone through a transformation like we did in the middle of the pandemic. And like we always said, I cannot say that I will transform externally if we don't transform internally. So one of the first things that we did is we transform ourselves internally. We decided to move to work towards process, to work towards purpose. It was first of all, it's being said by different studies, is the major transformation that any global company has ever gone through. And it was the way we work, the way how we operate internally, the way how we manage and conduct our business with our bottlers. So all those changes were going on through the pandemic, because then we realized that what took us to this 130, at that point in time, 135 years, it was not going to take us to the next 135 years. Now we're at 136. So we're very conscious about that. The world changed, the world evolved. And with that being evolving, we needed to make sure that if we wanted to transform the business outside, like I said before, we had to transform first internally. So we conducted that through the pandemic, at the same time that we're transforming our business externally. And you touched three very important points: digital, commercial, and ESG. And all of those three are major, and they're our top priorities in our business over the next 5 years when we talk about our long-range plan. Why? Because first of all, digitalization. We had to accelerate our digital agenda, without a doubt. We were working on it. We were already thinking about it. There was the structure in place about it. But then pandemic came in, and then we realized that we have to speed up our process and make sure that not only we transform internally, but also we transform externally the business. Food aggregators, partnership with them, like I was talking about small retailers, how we bring the digital agenda to them, not only on the educational side, but also how we added value to their business, because at the end it's about that, how we added value to the small retailers or to our customers per se. Also in commercial capabilities change. The profiles and how we conducted business with our partners was different. We had to readapt. This was a business that everybody was 24/7 on feet on the street. Imagine conducting a business 24/7 now virtually. So it changed the way we operated with our business partners. It changed the way how we operated with our bottling partners. And it was talked about our LTRMs, which are our agreements with the bottlers. We're moving and evolving with them. It was just announced a few months ago, the ones we had with FEMSA, and working and moving forward with others to be announced. But it was a conscious examination on how we're going to be sustainable another 136 year plus in the future. So that evolved as well. And then what we talked about, and I was mentioned before with our ESG agenda, is we conducted, not only will we reflect on what we were doing, and we were very happy and proud of what we were doing, but then a pause and reflection on what is needed for the future. And then topics that were not at the top of our heart of everybody, but then climate change. We were working on that, yes, but then we had to accelerate the agenda. And let's talk about, for example, water, a very important issue. So our commitments to water was being 100% replenishment of the water we used to use for our products. No, now it goes beyond that. It's go 125%. We talked about World Without Waste. So World Without Waste is by 2030, we will collect and recycle every single bottle that we will have out on the streets. That's a major commitment. And it changed because we realized that even if we are part of the problem, we need to be part of the solution. And that's our full commitment. But then go beyond that. Let me tell you something, 25% of refillable bottles have to be by 2025. Latin America is a leading world class on this. We're already 34% of our products are already on refillables. So that's a major commitment. So it changed, but I think it changed for the good. It's pushing us for the good. It's pushing us to go way beyond our limits. And the most important thing is we can see a full commitment from our bottling partners, a full commitment from the company, and a full commitment from the community. We have seen how people really love what we're doing, how we're doing, and of course they are helping us to be better every single day.
Thank you for that. And once again, I'm hearing a lot of partnership-based approach, a lot of the ecosystem play, which I absolutely love, and just the whole universe of different companies, partners, organizations, civil society players, and governments, of course, that you guys work with within this golden triangle. In the interest of time, I want to pose perhaps two final questions. One is, certainly ESG, whether that's water or other issues that you mentioned throughout the interview, this is a huge priority for Coca-Cola. So feel free to share any additional information analysis you want to share with us on this front. We know, for example, Coca-Cola has done a lot of work on addressing its own environmental impact while also empowering stakeholders throughout the supply chains. You've mentioned multiple examples. So if there's any additional info you want to share on that, feel free to do that. And then finally, perhaps a timely question. We know that in some parts of the world, in many parts of the world, in fact, we're looking at a looming global food security crisis. In some parts of the world, this is already happening. And the latest data we've seen is that in our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, there's some 14 million people across 13 countries in our region that could potentially reach extreme food insecure status in this year. This is very concerning. And Coca-Cola is just a major player in this space. So I guess this timely question and the final question here is, what role can Coca-Cola play to mitigate this crisis? What are some of the actions that you guys are already taking? Of course, before that, if there's anything you want to share on sustainability, feel free to do so.
Thank you, Pepe. So as for sustainability, just to reinforce three important things, and like I said, it's not just something that we say, and we always say, we will do, and then we say. And then regarding to that, three things that are important: our full commitment with World Without Waste, which I already mentioned, is collect every single bottle that we had out on the streets by 2030, have 25% of recyclable material in our bottles, and also creating partnerships when we talked about, bringing this to life. Then we have the water that I just mentioned. I think is so important. Our investments are increasing substantially on this area. We know that there is water scarcity worldwide. We know there is water scarcity in Latin America, that there is a lot of people suffering from water access, and we're fully committed with full plans in place to make sure that we contribute to this issue. And also, like I was saying before, our economic empowerment, committed to reactivate Latin America, committed to make Latin America successful and be, at the top of the eyes worldwide as being an example of economic recovery. So that's are the three most important things that I want to mention in terms of sustainability. And as far as food safety, definitely we play a role. We're a beverage company, and we have always committed ourselves to do what is right for the people first, because like I said before, what's right for the people is going to be right for the business. So there is a lot of programs in place that we have internally through our supply chain, through our commitment of how we do our marketing, through our commitment of how we operate our business locally, and through our commitment of how we make sure that we comply with every single law in every single country that we operate. What else can we do? We're open. And I have to say that we're open to listen. We're open to new ideas. We're open to bring anything that has to be done and bring it to life. We believe that we have a role to play, like I said before, and our commitment is we will be whatever we're needed. And like you mentioned, this is an issue that is an important issue right now. And in Latin America, it's not a side of that. So we will make sure that we will put every single program in place that we need to. We will make sure that we will be part of the solution in every single place that is needed, but also committed that our products will always be the best quality ever, and also to be as safe as always has been with our ingredients, with our products, with how we manage our products and how we distribute our products. But also, there's something very important. We are fully committed to educate whatever is needed. We want to make sure that education comes with the right possibilities to have and to bring food safety to our countries, especially those the ones that are in need.
Thank you so much, Angela. Just thank you for your commitment. Thank you for the actions that you mentioned and that Coca-Cola as a company has taken so far. And very importantly, thank you for being opening to listening, like you said, and being open to this interview. I think myself and everyone else that will be watching this Experts of the Americas interview have learned quite a lot about your perspective on some of these issues, and certainly taking notes on the final 3 points you mentioned on the sustainability front. I think at the Atlantic Council and certainly with our partners at the Inter-American Development Bank, we're very invested in these 3 issues. We'd love to continue working with you and other partners in this space to ensure that we're doing the right thing for the people. And like you said, what's right for the people is right for the business. So Angela, thank you once again for this very amazing and detailed interview. We look forward to following up once again after this, but just great to be with you today.
Thank you, Pepe, and thank you for the opportunity and looking forward to see you soon.